Welcome back to the deep dive. We're not just, scratching the surface here. We
Mhm.
really try to plunge right in and pull out those fascinating insights, often from sources you might not expect.
Exactly. The goal is always to make sometimes complex stuff feel, well, understandable and memorable.
Mhm.
Help you get informed, but hopefully enjoy the process too.
And today, we've got a really intriguing one. We're basing this on a very specific source. Sir James George Fraser's huge work, Folklore in the Old Testament.
A
Classic,
classic.
right? And we're focusing deep on part 3, chapter 14, the title Elijah and the Ravens. So let's get into it.
Okay. So our mission today, if you like, isn't just to retell the story of Elijah by the brook. We're using Frazer to explore all these amazing layers beneath it. We're talking folklore, natural history, how people perceive things way back when, all wrapped around this single, pretty striking biblical image.
Yeah, it's amazing how one detail branches out.
It really does. We'll
Yeah.
see connections to ancient beliefs, actual places on the map, and even, well, something that sounds a bit like an ancient urban legend.
Okay, so let's ground ourselves first. The biblical account, right? It's from 1 Kings chapter 17. Pretty dramatic stuff. God tells the prophet Elijah to go to King Ahab
Uh-huh, the king of Israel.
and tell him basically no rain or dew for years. That's a heavy message to deliver.
Definitely. A drought like that would be catastrophic.
But then God doesn't just leave Elijah hanging. He tells him, "Go hide yourself by the Brook Cherith near the Jordan. You'll drink from the brook, and I've commanded ravens to feed you there."
Ravens. Not exactly the first bird you think of for room service.
Aha, no. But the text says Elijah did just that. He went to Cherith, and sure enough, ravens brought him bread and meat every morning and evening, and he drank from the brook until, well, eventually the drought caught up and it dried up.
Now, what's really fascinating, and where Fraser comes in, is this connection to actual geography. The Brook Cherith tradition tends to identify it with a place called the Wady Kelt.
Wady Kelt, tell us about that.
Right, so it's this valley, or wadi, that cuts down eastward from the highlands of Judea, heading towards the Jordan Plain, not far from Jericho. Whether it's the exact spot or not, the landscape itself is, well, it fits the story perfectly.
And Fraser paints quite a picture, doesn't he? He calls it one of Palestine's wildest and most romantic spots, a tremendous gorge.
Yeah, like it's been literally cleft through the mountains, sheer cliffs on either side.
And down at the bottom, it's apparently really narrow, maybe just 20 yards across in places, with the stream pushing through thickets, breaks of cane, rushes, and oleanders, he says.
That creates this sort of vivid green ribbon against the bare rock walls and really gives you a sense of wild isolation, perfect for hiding out.
You can almost see how a place like that could inspire a legend, right? The drama of it all.
Absolutely. And it makes practical sense, too. It's secluded, and importantly, it would have had water at least for a while, even in dry seasons. Fraser mentions hearing the murmurous sound of water from deep down.
And the birds.
Exactly. Looking down, you might see the very birds mentioned or implied. Ravens, eagles, those huge griffin vultures, just sort of wheeling around below. It feels ancient, like it hasn't changed much.
And Fraser mentions other wildlife, too. That's probably still there. Ibex on the cliffs, kingfishers, pigeons, black grackles. It fills out the picture of Elijah's potential neighbors.
Yeah, and those caverns in the cliffs,
Yeah.
once used by hermits, he says, but now home to, well, ravens, eagles, and vultures. It all fits together, the isolation, the natural provision.
Now, zooming out a bit, the view from that whole area sounds incredible. You're coming down from Jerusalem towards the Jordan Valley.
Right, through miles of pretty desolate, sun-baked hills.
And then suddenly Fraser describes seeing this green thread way down below. That's the Wady Kelt.
It must be a striking contrast.
And then from the gorge's mouth, the view opens up, a natural gateway with these white chalk peaks. Down below, a green patch marking Jericho, the city of palms.
Oh.
Then beyond that, the long brown expanse of the plain, the dark line of the Jordan River, the hills of Moab across the way, even Mount Quarantana, the traditional temptation site, and the Dead Sea glinting in the south.
You can really picture Elijah maybe pausing there, taking all that in.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? How much did this specific vivid landscape actually shape the story? Did the place inspire the tale of the ravens?
Well, that's exactly what Fraser suggests. He thinks the story of the ravens feeding Elijah was quite possibly suggested by the presence of the birds in the Wady Kelt itself.
Because they're actually there.
They're still there. They nest in the gorge. You see them soaring around. They're a constant feature of the place.
And not just in that one wadi, apparently. Canon Tristram, who Frazer quotes, calls the raven family the most characteristic and conspicuous birds in that whole desolate region between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea.
So they're just everywhere.
Pretty much, you'd see them, you'd hear them. Tristram mentions their discordant jabber, the caw, the chatter, the horse croak, a constant soundtrack to the landscape.
And they thrive even in the absolute harshest spots, like near Masada, at the south end of the Dead Sea. Tristram found them there in what he called a waterless, lifeless wilderness.
Wow. Which really highlights their role as carrion eaters, right?
Exactly. It brings to mind that biblical saying, wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together and the ravens also. Nature providing the narrative elements, you could say.
Okay, so the ravens are there, but here's where Frazer takes it deeper, right? The idea that there is a special propriety, a kind of fittingness, in ravens specifically helping a prophet.
Yes, because the raven wasn't just any bird in the ancient world. It was widely seen as a bird of omen, even believed to have prophetic abilities itself.
Like the Greeks.
The ancient Greeks considered ravens sacred to Apollo, who was the god of prophecy. They actually drew omens from the way ravens croaked.
So the sound they made was meaningful.
Deeply meaningful. And somewhat even further, there was a belief, mentioned by Porphyry, that eating a raven's heart could grant you the power of divination.
Wow.
Okay. And the Romans had their own lore. They thought a raven croaking in a particular way could predict rain. And this idea of the raven is ominous, especially predicting death. Well, it lasted. Think Shakespeare.
Right, Macbeth. The raven himself is hoarse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan.
Exactly. And Frazer points out it's not just European folklore. He mentions the Lillooet Indians in British Columbia. They believe that having a raven as your guardian spirit gives you the gift of prophecy, especially foretelling death or changes in the weather.
So this connection between ravens and prophecy or special knowledge is incredibly widespread.
It really is. The raven is a major figure in myths across many cultures, particularly in northwestern America. There's clearly something about this bird that captured the human imagination.
What is it about them, do you think?
Well, Frazer quotes the ornithologist Alfred Newton, who called the raven probably the most highly developed of all birds, quick-sighted, sagacious, and bold. They're intelligent birds.
And you can see how that intelligence would make an impression. People would notice them, right? Maybe following hunters or fishermen for scraps.
For sure. And early shepherds would have known them too, probably not always fondly, given their reputation for attacking vulnerable livestock.
But they're not just scavengers dependent on humans.
No, exactly. Newton points out, the raven is no mere dependent upon man. It can always fend for itself. There's a kind of cunning independence there that probably commanded a certain respect, even awe.
And that respect or superstition seems to have been incredibly strong. Strong enough to sometimes outweigh the fact that they could be pests or predators.
Definitely. This sentiment of veneration or superstition, as Frazer calls it, seems ancient and powerful.
Which brings us to that amazing Roman story from Pliny.
Oh yeah, that one's incredible. Tell us about it.
Okay, so Pliny tells this tale from Emperor Tiberius's time. There's a raven nested on a temple that basically adopts a local shoemaker's shop.
Right. Already pretty unusual.
But then, this bird apparently learned to fly to the public square, the rostra, every morning and salute the Emperor Tiberius and his sons Germanicus and Drusus by name.
By name. That's
Well,
startling.
And it would greet other passersby, too, before flying back to the shop. And it did this for years.
Okay, that's more than just clever mimicry. That's
But the story gets darker. Another shoemaker nearby gets jealous, or maybe just angry, and kills the bird.
Oh, no.
And the public reaction was apparently furious. They were outraged. They drove the killer out of the area and eventually killed him.
Wow. So serious consequences.
Absolutely. And the raven, it got a massive public funeral. Thousands attended. There was a procession with a flute player, the bier carried by 2 Ethiopians. Pliny notes they were chosen for being as black as the corpse they carried, and tons of wreaths.
A state funeral for a bird.
Pretty much. Pliny says it was grander than many a prince's funeral, and its death was avenged more thoroughly than the murder of Scipio Africanus, a major Roman hero.
That really underscores the level of reverence. This wasn't just affection for a clever pet. It was something much deeper, almost religious.
It really seems like it. And another quality that must have fed into this mystique is their ability to mimic human speech.
Right, the vocal mimicry.
Yeah.
Goldsmith claimed a raven could be taught to sing a popular song, The Black Joke, with great distinctness, truth, and humor.
Imagine hearing that.
I know. And Yorell, in his History of British Birds, says the raven has this power better than any other British bird. He shares stories. One raven whose voice was mistaken for a person calling, and another one at a guardhouse in Chatham that apparently learned to imitate the sentinel's calls so well it actually turned out the guard sometimes.
Huh. That's brilliant.
Okay.
So you have to wonder, did this ability to sound human contribute to the belief that they could communicate prophecies or special knowledge? Made them seem almost liminal between the human and animal world.
It seems very likely, doesn't it? It adds another layer to their perceived wisdom and connection to unseen forces.
Okay, so we have their intelligence, their presence, the prophetic associations, the mimicry. But Frazer points to perhaps a darker, more primal reason for the reverence too.
Yes, this is where it gets quite confronting. He explores the possibility that the raven's habit of feeding on human dead might have contributed to the atmosphere of mystery and awe around them.
Oh, so?
Well, the thinking goes, if some cultures believed consuming parts of the dead transferred qualities, maybe they imagined birds of prey, like ravens or vultures, absorb the wisdom or spirit of the people they consumed on battlefields or elsewhere.
That's a stark thought.
It is. And Frazer draws a really interesting parallel with how some East African tribes viewed hyenas.
Hyenas, okay.
Yeah, so the Nandi people, for example, traditionally exposed their dead to be consumed by hyenas. And because of this, they held hyenas in great respect. They believed hyenas could talk like humans and even communicate with the spirits of the dead. There were even practices like, if a family lost several children, they might place the next newborn on a path where hyenas frequent, hoping that hyenas would sort of intercede with the spirits to let the child live. And if the child survived, sometimes they'd name it hyena.
That's a profound connection born from something pretty grim.
It is. And other tribes, like the Begesu and Wanyamwezi, had similar practices of exposing the dead and regarding hyenas as sacred. They thought a hyena's cry might be the voice of someone who recently died.
So they wouldn't harm them.
Right. The Wanyamwezi, Frazer notes, wouldn't kill a hyena because they genuinely feared it might be a relative, an aunt, a grandmother, whose soul had passed into the animal.
So Frazer's point is
What?
that this applies to ravens too.
His synthesis is that these kinds of beliefs suggest an idea that the souls of the dead are reborn in the hyenas which devour their bodies, and that this practice, combined with a belief in transmigration of souls, could create an imaginary kinship between humans and scavenger animals, hyenas, eagles, vultures, and yes, ravens.
So the raven's connection to death, to consuming the dead rather than just being repulsive, could actually elevate it, make it seem like a vessel for ancestral spirits or wisdom.
Exactly. It adds this deep, almost primal layer to why the raven might be seen as sacred or powerful. It shows how even the most stark aspects of nature can get woven into our belief systems in really complex ways.
What an incredible journey that chapter takes us on. Seriously, we started with Elijah by a brook.
A single verse.
And we've traveled through real landscapes, observed bird behavior, dipped into ancient Greek and Roman beliefs, Native American folklore, and even East African tribal customs surrounding death.
It really shows how Frazer could take one detail, the raven, and unpack a whole world of human thought, belief, and interaction with nature.
It demonstrates the power of folklore studies, doesn't it? To reveal those hidden connections.
Absolutely. Reading Frazer helps you see these familiar biblical stories, or any ancient text really, through such a different lens. You see the layers, the echoes of much older beliefs, the way the natural world constantly informed human narratives.
It makes you appreciate the sheer intricate tapestry of it all.
Definitely.
So here's a thought to leave you with. The next time you happen to see a raven, maybe perched on a wire or soaring overhead, what might you hear in its call now?
Good question.
Knowing this deep ancient history, connections to prophecy, to kings and emperors, to this profound, almost eerie reverence, even linked to the cycle of life and death itself, does it change how you perceive that bird?
It certainly makes you think, doesn't it? About how much the world around us, the creatures we share it with, have shaped our stories, our beliefs, maybe even who we are, often in ways we barely notice.